everybody. Wave. Hi. Hi. Woo. All right, welcome everybody. Welcome to the second year of Warp and Woof. So it was snowing. It's snowing, you came out anyway. Thank you for being here. So tonight we're gonna hear some weird stories. They're wild, they can be poignant, they're crazy, but they're all around the evening's theme, which is Call of the Wild. So I promise you that when we came up with this theme, like we had no idea that there was going to be a Harrison Ford movie based on the book coming out at the same time. We just knew we wanted to hear some good stories about nature, about the outdoors, about animals, and about a time when some of our storytellers just heard their own call of the wild, like you do from time to time. So what we wound up with is pretty much that, plus a small amount of material that may or may not constitute an admission of guilt, that may or may not be permissible in a court of law, and the statute of limitations, for the most part, has run out anyway. So before we get started, and some of you have heard this spiel before, let me tell you a little bit about Warp and Woof and what it is. So we mostly exist to tell and to hear good stories. Pretty simple. But my day job is at Earlham School of Religion. There's the cheer, yes, there's the shout out. And they gave me a little seed money to start this event, and that's because we think it has something to do with ministry. Not the preaching or getting you saved kind, although I've always kind of wanted to do an altar call, so just stay tuned for that. But the kind of ministry that builds community. So the mission's in the name, Warp and Woof. So I have to drop my little thing here, on the cord. Like in weaving, the warp are the threads that run this way, and the woof, also known as the weft, but both are correct, thank you, are the threads that run the other way. So if you think of each story as a thread, then over time, and in each show, we start to weave the fabric of Richmond and Wayne County, Warp and Woof. So that's the idea. To get as many different people, as many kinds of threads up here as we can, and to weave kind of the craziest, fullest fabric of this place that we can. So thank you all for being here and being a part of it. And with that, the spiel can end and we can get started. So our first storyteller. He is a Richmond native and an Eagle Scout. In his professional life, he's a biology teacher who has led field courses to Belize, Costa Rica, and the Smoky Mountains. He's taught at IU East and currently teaches biology at Union County High School. So please welcome Jerry Richwine.
Good evening. How you guys doing? Good? All right. So here's my story. Late November, several years ago, on a hike with my friends in the deep woods of the Ozarks, I discovered how much misery is actually in Missouri. Hiking in the Ozarks isn't normally very treacherous. It's very typical, similar to around here when you're hiking. But this was kind of atypical. We were hiking in late November. We were far away from any signs of civilization, and it's actually pretty close to freezing. Add in with that a perpetual drizzle that didn't end. The type of drizzle that whittles away at your soul. It can be quite challenging and very demoralizing. So, a couple of my friends with various levels of outdoor experience, and I, who had the most experience, planned a 3 to 4 day hike, 40 miles, backcountry hiking expedition. The hike began just like any other hike until about an hour in. That's when disaster strikes. I stepped over a tree limb, I slipped on wet leaves, I went down. Not a big deal, but when you're carrying an extra 30 pounds of gear, Your body doesn't really like that. So the problems grew. Good news is that we were going to hike for another couple hours. So we set up camp, and I thought to myself, I've had worse. I'll be fine tomorrow. I'll power through it. Arrogance and pride are sometimes a bad combination. It wasn't quite fine the next morning. We hiked about 10 more miles, and the pain in my leg grew and grew. I even thought when we had to ford through about 3-foot deep river that maybe, just maybe, the cold water would have helped. It did not. It was so cold, it burned, and I swear it smelled like whiskey. And I was in so much pain at that moment, I really wanted whiskey. That wasn't gonna help. We set up camp, had to suck up my pride. I told my group about my injury. That's not an easy thing for most people to do. But I did, and they understood. So we conducted a plan to head back home. Unfortunately, the closest point of civilization was a road about 2 miles away. So we decided to do that in the next day. We make it to the road. We call for our 24-hour shuttle service to pick us up and to drop us back off at our vehicle. After about an hour on the phone trying to call and reach the 24-hour shuttle service, we gave up and my friends flagged down a vehicle to hitchhike. Yeah, that's right. This is a part of a horror movie, when the characters of the story have made a mistake, right? That seed of fear has been planted. The vehicle that picks us up is a beat-up old truck, rust holes, sketchy as all get out, loud muffler even. The man very grizzled, rough-looking, but polite, as would any mass murderer. My friend and I are forced to ride in the truck bed on top of a tarp, which had a bunch of mystery stuff underneath it, while our other friend was inside the cabin, free to chat away in the warm condition. Who's the injured one? So on our way, I start poking around underneath the truck, and that is when the seed of fear germinates. I see a bunch of axes, very sharp tools and objects, and there might have been a moment where I swear I heard Deliverance-style banjos playing. Some of the tools either had rust or blood or both. So my fear starts to grow. I start thinking, man, I'm the injured one. What do predators do when they're hunting? They pick off the elderly, the sick, the injured. I am that prey. So we eventually arrive at our car, the truck stops, and the driver opens his door and runs out into the woods. Shh. What? Of course, in my head, he's running to get a gun, or worse, who knows what. Any manner of tools of torture, prey, death. So we quickly load up our car in hopes the fear of murder do not become real. And as we finished, the man steps out and introduces himself and starts to converse. And I am thinking, this guy is just buying time to find a window of opportunity. And then he goes, hey, I got something to show you guys. Before you take off, I got to show you this. So he heads back to his car. I'm thinking, yep, we're dead. We're so screwed. So the guy ducks back into his vehicle. I jump in mine, and I start it. Don't care. Friends are watching the guy. Bye. I'm not getting killed. I'm screaming inside my mind, thinking, what are they doing? This is how horror stories end for the characters. So the seed of fear is full grown and blooming. He pulls out a knapsack with a Bowie knife, fire starter kit, and a bunch of other stuff. He proceeds to tell us he goes backcountry hiking too, but he doesn't take 30 pounds of stuff like we do. He just takes this little kit and does wilderness survival style backcountry hiking. We exchanged numbers, and he told us to get in touch when we do this again. A year later, we decide to do this again. We did not call him back.
one of the temptations you have to resist when you MC this is I'm like, oh, that makes me think of this really good story that happened to me one time. So sometime ask me about the time the guy with a gun in his pocket said, boys, I don't want to have to come hunting y'all. In any case, our next storyteller is an Earlham grad who fell in love with Richmond and stayed. You probably know him as the mastermind and coordinator of the Richmond Farmers Market. Please welcome to our stage, Caleb Smith.
Hi, y'all. Is this thing on? Okay, so I grew up originally in New Hampshire on the East Coast, and growing up, I did a lot of hiking and backpacking, canoeing. Was always out and about in the woods whenever I could be. And when I graduated from high school, which was with a lot of friends who had also had similar upbringings in hiking and camping and backpacking, we all decided that we wanted to do a big hiking trip on our own. Like we'd always been hearing about from our teachers, our mentors, other people on hiking trips, our parents, things like that. And we had just graduated and we knew that we needed to prove to the world that we were adults. And that no parents, no teachers hike seemed like the perfect way to do that. So the wilderness had called and we had to answer. And so, you know, it wasn't just a hike, but it was really a coming of age thing for us, I think. And we decided that to really prove ourselves, we needed to hike the highest mountain in the country. Well, that turned out it's in Alaska, so we settled on the contiguous 48, which is Mount Whitney. It's located in the High Sierra of California. So we decided that we would hike the John Muir Trail, which is a grueling 211-mile hike that starts in Yosemite Valley and ends at Mount Whitney. And something we didn't realize at the time was that there was a lot of behind-the-scenes things that our parents, our teachers had all done to make those hikes work. And that was all pretty essential. So, me, my friend DJ and Alan, our friends Oriana and Sophia, we all met up in Denver. And so we set off on a set of trains and planes and automobiles and buses that it's a story of its own, but we made it to Yosemite Valley. And we explored for a day, and then we headed back by bus to our campground at Tuolumne Meadows, which was a much cheaper campground, about an hour and a half outside of Yosemite, which was great, but we ran into our first hiccup. We had failed to realize that our campground was 25 miles in on the trail that we had decided we needed to hike to prove ourselves as adults, as members of society, all of that. So by camping there, we hadn't planned enough time to do that extra hike. We had decided that we needed to spend some extra time getting ready and things like that, but we decided to do it anyways. So we didn't get off to an auspicious start, that's for sure. So on our first day, we decided that to prove ourselves, we, and by we I mean the boys of the trip, needed to do the first 25 miles. We needed that sense of completion. We'd done the whole 211 miles of this trail. We had finished it all. The girls didn't care, and that probably should have been our first sign that it wasn't that big of a deal. But anyways, we woke up, or we decided that we would take a bus to the valley first thing in the morning, and we would do a day hike of this 25 miles. Not a big deal. And it left at 10 in the morning. It was the first one we could take, and we overslept and missed it. So that wasn't a big deal. We could just hitchhike. Our first friend, Alan, got a ride real easy, but moving on, me and DJ, we couldn't get a ride. And then, all of a sudden, out of seemingly nowhere, this wizened old lady covered in dirt, head to toe, who looked like she'd been living in the wilderness since before time, appeared and said, "You need to go down there, that's where they'll pick you up." And she was right, and about 5 minutes later, a very nice German tourist picked me and my friend DJ up, and we went on down to Yosemite Valley. And we stopped along the way, we took some pictures with the redwoods with our new friend, And by the time we got down into the valley and said goodbye to our new friend and met up with the rest of our team, it was already 12:30 in the afternoon. And we knew that we needed to get going, so we set off. It was no big deal. We didn't have full packs on. We were, young, energetic teenagers, and so we decided that, we could do it. No big deal. So we felt like we were making great time. We were flying past all these tourists, we were just going. We passed all these beautiful waterfalls, but we slowly started realizing that a 25-mile hike with a 10,000-foot climb wasn't actually a day hike, believe it or not. So we planned it as a day hike. We brought water filters, a warm layer for each of us, and a few emergency supplies, and some peanut butter and tortillas. So we kept hiking, we still were pretty optimistic, we were shooting on by people left and right, and we stopped seeing so many people, and it started to get dark, and we started noticing that people were setting up their camps for the night. At one point, we passed this nice, very well-equipped family who it looked like they were doing their first overnight hike, and the dad called out to us. He said, "You boys all right?" And we had a choice at that point. We knew we could say, no, we're not all right. We are in way over our heads, but this was our chance to prove ourselves, and this was our first real test. So we said, yeah, we're doing great. Just headed up to the meadows. And his eyes widened, and he opened his mouth like he was going to say something, but we just shot on past and kept going. So quickly our day hike turned into a night hike. And we were 3 teenagers in the middle of the woods in the Sierra Nevadas. And we realized another problem, which was that our emergency supplies were only 1 flashlight and 1 lighter that I had bought that morning as sources of light. So our last 10 or 15 miles of the hike, we have no idea how long we were hiking in the dark. We're lit by Alan in the back with the headlamp, which batteries were dying, and me in the lighter, with the lighter in the front, flicking the flint every 5 seconds, taking a snapshot of what the trail looked like so I could memorize the way forward over the rocks. So we arrived back at 2 a.m., finished our first day of hiking, and for some reason we were insanely proud of what we had done, but it was, somehow it felt like a little bit of an omen, but we ignored it. And we still thought that we should be hiking Mount Whitney, and going along this trail. So our preparation, it got better. There were some things along the way that weren't our fault. One of our friends' food shipments didn't arrive, and so for our last 10 days, 5 people shared 4 people's worth of food, which led to some interesting conversations, more like arguments really, about what the best Subway sandwich is, some other things like that. Another one, I called my parents for the first time in 2 weeks. I was 17, I'm still a minor. They were still my guardians. First time in 2 weeks I'd talked to them, standing on top of a 13,000-foot pass where I'd gotten cell reception. I called them, and it's ringing, and finally, as I connect, we notice a storm rolling in the distance, and there's lightning cracking and all sorts of fun stuff. And so I say, "Hi, I'm alive, gotta go," and take off. There were some other interesting or bad omens, like the time I almost got hit by a falling weather balloon, but that's another story. But finally, after about 20 days on the trail, we were at the foot of Mount Whitney, and we'd learned a lot of lessons about independence and adulthood, and yet we were still not starting up the 14,496-foot peak until late afternoon. But we'd made it. We were there, and by God, we wanted to be able to spend some time and see the sunset, see the stars, and the sunrise from the top of the world, actually and figuratively. But, so we also hadn't realized that most people don't camp on top of the tallest peak in the contiguous 48. For obvious reasons, wind, cold, there's nowhere to stake a tent. But and so most people would camp at a base camp and wake up at pre-dawn and then head to the summit for sunrise if they wanted to do that. But we had a bad track record at waking up early at that point. So up we went, and we made it to the top just as the sun set. And there was a small hut on top where we met a few other people who were just as foolish as us. But there was only enough room for three of our group to sleep inside. So, me and my friend DJ decided to pitch a tent in the only place on top of the whole mountain where you could fit a 2-person tent. But with the way the wind was blowing and the temperatures were dropping, we decided we needed to share a sleeping bag. And we were pretty progressive, open-minded teenagers, but 2 teenage boys was still sharing a sleeping bag was still interesting, and it was an experience for both of us, and we didn't get much sleep because we were kicking each other so much. But that actually worked in our favor because we woke up pretty easily, and me and some of my closest friends from high school were able to huddle together and watch from the highest point in the contiguous 48 as the sun rose over from the east over the United States. So we had done it. We hightailed it down the mountain at that point. We were thrilled to return to civilization. And we split our last protein bar in those last few hours on the trail as our rations had all but run out at that point. And as we were hitting those last few switchbacks, going down the trail, chattering excitedly about all the food we were going to eat, hamburgers, Subway, noodles, carbs. I stopped to think for a moment, and I had begun to realize that adulthood wasn't just about being prepared, but figuring it out as you go. And luckily, before I had too many earth-shattering revelations, I found the thing that I'd been wanting more than anything else that whole trip, which was a vending machine. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Caleb. And I didn't say thanks again to Jerry. It's good to have the sub-theme of dubious hitchhiking experiences, hiking and hitchhiking experiences. So let's clap again for Caleb and Jerry. So that was awesome. So the first thing to know about our next speaker is I was sitting there while Caleb was talking, and I thought, is she actually here? And then I looked up and I saw her buying a beer at the bar and kind of walking and strolling around. And I thought, there, she's ready. And she's not even aware that I'm talking at her now because I can see and I'm looking at her. And she's not even, oh, wait, now she's aware. So our next speaker is a native of Venezuela, and she's also an assistant professor of management at IU East. So please welcome the lovely, the talented Janie Rivas.
Okay, when I came to the United States as a graduate student, I needed to learn English fast, desperately. I really needed. So I felt so lucky when a Polish friend and her husband invited me to be their roommate. It was perfect, right? She speaks Polish, he speaks English, I speak Spanish. The only way to communicate between us was English. Perfect, right? But there was a problem, always, right? There was a problem. They had a cat. And you may think this is not a problem, but listen, I do not like animals inside my home. I mean, guys, they are beautiful, they are nice, but cats, animals inside home, they are messy, they scratch or, scratch things, break things, they get dirty things around them. So, I mean, I like them, but not inside my home. Well, but I thought, it's a cat. You know cats' personality. They are independent, they like to be alone, they like to have their space, so I say, this cat will leave me alone. And I made a decision, I moved in with my friends. It was so mistake, a big mistake. This cat is not like the cats you know. No, really. This cat was more like, let me give you an example. This cat followed my friends for all around the house. It's not that a dog. right? He followed. And the cat also, for example, he liked a lot to play with my friends. And did I tell you that the cat had a box of toys, a huge one, and he liked to take toys with her mouth and go follow my friends, asking them to play with him. What kind of cat is this? Well, but the good point is that the cat didn't bother me, never, until she did. One day, I put the cereal with milk in a cup, and when I came back, I left. And when I came back, guess who was eating my food? The cat. Another day, I opened the door, my bedroom door, and the cat was over my papers and book. Do you know who is the baby of a graduate student? Papers and book. Yes. There was my baby, and that cat was sleeping over my babies. At this point, I really thought this cat has a personality disorder. What about this personality disorder, dependent personality disorder, that means that you cannot be alone? You have to be with someone else, dependent personality disorder. Or what about narcissistic personality disorder, that you all the time need the attention from someone, right? Well, one day, I remember, I say, well, whatever, you really need this, learn English, right? So let it go. One day, and it was like, not really bad, but one day I arrived early than my roommates did, and the cat decided that it was a good time for moving forward in our relationship. I was alone in home, get ready for relaxing, went into the sofa, turned on the television, and the cat jumped into my lap. I couldn't believe it. I nicely said to that cat, "Get out of here." I couldn't believe it, and that was enough. The cat understood. So the cat decided that the cat understood that message and never bothered me again when we were alone. But when we were with my friends, the situation was different. The cat understood that something was different. One day, I was again with my friends in the sofa watching the television, and the cat again jumped with a toy in her mouth into my lap. But this time, she had a message for me. I dare you, with her fires, yellow eyes, looking directly into my eyes, and she told me, "I dare you to scream here, in front of your friends, right?" And you may believe that the solution was very easy, something like, "Okay, get out, cats. I don't like cats in my laps. I don't like cats in my bed." But listen, this cat was not a regular cat for my roommates. It was like an only child. This cat slept with my friends. This cat ate with us in the table, has a plate special for her in the table, a cat for her. How can you tell someone about her only child or his only child? You know what? Your baby is a monster. Get that baby out of here. You cannot say something like that, guys. And I'm not sure if I told you, but my friends, they were very nice to me. Listen, when I was sad, they bought donuts for me. When I didn't have car, they took me to the university. And even they spent many months learning Spanish. I didn't know that at the time, but they did, because they wanted to express in my own language. They were very nice to me. But I really could stand that. I really hate that cat, really. So one day, one of our friends from Venezuela came to have dinner with me. And I thought it was a good time to express my feeling because my friend was being too friendly with the cat. Was too friendly, like, oh, so cute. And the cat, did I tell you about the personality disorder? The cat was like, and my friend was so cute, so, everything. So I couldn't stand that. I told my friend, hey, really? You too? Right? It was so, it really made me mad. So I told her in Spanish. You are in Spanish one. You will learn this. I will say it in Spanish. Odio ese gato. Right. Even if you are in the Spanish one, you will understand that. I hate that cat. But I didn't say odio ese gato. No, I say odio ese gato. Right, I was very angry at that. My friend, you know that they were learning English. So they understood what I said. I explained then the situation. And I told, hey, this may be a dog, a pet, or maybe a criminal. But it's not a cat. Right. And they understand. Thank you so much. That's my story.
I love that. I love the part where it's like, how do you tell someone, your baby is a monster? Thanks, Janie. That was awesome. So up next, our last, before we will go into a special Warp and Woof intermission. But before that, we have a lifelong Richmond resident and lifelong animal lover. She works at Purina Animal Nutrition here in town, but her love of animals is more personal. For the last 25 years, she's been doing small volunteer reptile education shows for schools, for scout groups, for clubs, excuse me, for churches, for fundraisers. So please welcome Jennifer Brokamp.
So imagine, you're hanging up your kindergartner's coat. And it seems heavier than usual. Why is this coat heavy? So of course you check the pockets to find out what's in the pockets making this coat heavy. And you reach into the pocket and you come out with a handful of mud and dead leaves. Well, you're going to ask your kid, why are your coat pockets full of mud and dead leaves? Well, that's where the worms live. That's how I started. My parents love to tell that story. My call of the wild continued at my grandparents' house on the edge of Richmond, where I could catch grasshoppers that spit in my hand when I picked them up, and the crawdads that crawl up through their tunnels in the yard, and watch the toads that sit around under the porch lights catching moths after the sun goes down. And then I saw my first snake. It was just a little garter snake. Just like this little guy here. Now, I knew what a snake was, of course, but nobody had ever told me that I was supposed to be scared of them or that they were bad. And of course, I was fascinated. Here's this little thing crawling across the top of the bush, and it's got no legs. This is awesome. This is the coolest critter I've ever seen. So of course, it wasn't very long before I started bringing these home as well. At one point, we had 3 of them. 2 of them were about the size of this little guy here, and one of them was a really big female. Well, one day, we didn't have 3 anymore, we only had 2. And I was pretty disappointed because I was pretty sure that the big one ate one of the small ones. I mean, that's what happens, right? We didn't think much about it until the day my dad came home from work and saw a stick on the living room floor. and he reached down to pick it up and it moved. The mystery of the missing snake had been solved. But I was always bringing home things like this, and everybody knew. My family knew, my friends knew, even our neighbors knew. At one point I brought home 2 little baby snapping turtles, and I just loved those little turtles. I'd play with them in the backyard, and I'd get the hose and make a lot of mud and build like a little mud bog, but for turtles instead of trucks. And my sister and I were out playing with them one day, and one of them got lost. I don't know how we lost one of them, but we were little kids, and you know, our attention spans weren't the greatest. But we looked all over the yard and could not find that little baby turtle for anything. I was heartbroken. This was my pet. I loved these animals. Now, I still love the one I had left, but I felt so bad for the one that was missing. Then one day, about 2 weeks later, there was a knock at the door, and one of the neighbor kids came up and said, "Is this yours?" And there's my baby snapping turtle. Of course it's mine. Who else's would it be? But like I said, everybody knew, and I was always bringing these things home. My grandpa sacrificed every coffee can in his shop for me to poke holes in the lid and bring critters home in. And then, I don't know if you remember this, McDonald's started selling Happy Meals in buckets with preformed holes in the lid. Oh my gosh, those were the greatest. You could bring home anything in those. It was fantastic. But along with just bringing them home, I wanted to know everything I could about these little animals. So I started taking summer classes, summer nature classes. I checked out every library book I could get my hands on. I wanted to know everything. And I thought I did. I knew quite a bit. Kind of like, you know, little boys that memorize all the names of the dinosaurs and can identify every last one of them. Well, that was me and reptiles. One day my uncle drops by. He'd been fishing. He's carrying this 5-gallon bucket in his hand. And this little 5-gallon bucket is this itty bitty teeny tiny snake, maybe not even a fourth of the size of this one. It was just a little yellowish colored snake with some brown banded markings down its back. I knew right away what it was. This was a baby common northern water snake. They're found all over the place here. I knew exactly what it was. My parents weren't convinced. Remember, this is almost 40 years ago. There's no internet. There's no smartphones. There's no Alexa to say, "Hey Alexa, what kind of snakes live around here?" We did have the Encyclopedia Britannica, all 24 volumes. Okay? But it was kind of vague and there were no pictures. So here we've got this little bitty snake that's absolutely terrifying. And it's flattened its head and it's flattened its body and it's striking repeatedly. Well, I'm going to try to make it feel a little bit better, so we transfer it from the bucket into a 10-gallon aquarium that I have hastily turned into a habitat. Of course, the poor little thing's still striking, and it's hitting the glass and it's leaving some saliva residue on the glass. Well, this is pretty much freaking my parents out. I'm a little kid. Just because it's what I say it is doesn't necessarily mean that's what it is. They don't know the snake is harmless. They don't know there are no venomous snakes native to Wayne County. They know there's no way I'm going to keep my hand out of that tank. They know I'm going to play with the snake and be bitten. They weren't wrong. So doing what protective parents do, they decided that they needed to dispose of the dangerous little snake for my safety. And there was no argument that I could make that could change their minds. Defeated, I went back into the house. I got into a sleeping bag, and I was sitting on the living room floor with a sleeping bag pulled up over my head, and I was crying because I knew what was going to happen to this poor little snake. And I just sat there listening for the sound that I knew was coming. And I heard it. It was the sound of the metal shovel hitting the concrete of the backyard sidewalk. And I knew that the little snake was gone. And I just sobbed. It just broke my heart. Looking back, I realized that that was the defining moment that changed me from a little kid who was just obsessed with critters to somebody who wanted to do something to help them, to maybe keep this from happening again. Because I really felt like it was my fault that that little snake had died. If I hadn't loved them so much, my uncle wouldn't have brought it over, and it wouldn't have scared my parents. As I grew, I continued taking classes, and I was fortunate enough to find someone who was willing to mentor me in my strange obsession with these animals. And not only did he teach me everything I ever wanted to know about reptiles and more, but he also taught me how to share that information with others. He started letting me tag along when he did educational programs with reptiles, and it wasn't too long before I branched out and started doing those on my own. I felt if I could just reach one kid and share these with them before somebody told that child that they were supposed to be afraid. If I could just reach one person that could see a snake and say, hey, that's a pretty fascinating creature, and enjoy watching it and letting it go on its way instead of first thinking, I've got to kill it. If I could save one snake, then maybe I would make up for that one whose life I cost. And that is why we live with a house full of reptiles.
That was spectacular. And I think before we go all the way into intermission, what we're going to do during intermission is Jen is here and is going to share not only the story, but some of the reptiles she lives with and shows. So do you think we can introduce them before intermission, and would it work that way or no?
Absolutely, absolutely.
All right, so let's all, you can pull them out and we'll meet the reptiles. And then during intermission, if you want to come up and learn more about the reptiles, Jen will be here to tell you more about the reptiles. So, Jen will Phil, okay, Phil's the wrangler. I can tell you that there is water in this tank. Up first. Let's see who we have up first. Special guest for Call of the Wild. Who do we have? Who's this?
This is Bowser. And Bowser is a common snapping turtle. Obviously, they're very common around here. As you can see, Bowser's not trying to bite me. We've had Bowser since he was a teeny tiny little baby snapping turtle. Unfortunately, I didn't lose him. So he's now 7 years old, and he's been an important part of our reptile program since we got him. What's that? I'm sorry, I missed that. Anyway, so yeah, Bowser is up here, and I will turn him around so that he's facing me. But yeah, if anybody wants to pet the back of his shell, that's fine. He's quite used to that. He's been doing that for a very, very long time.
How hard does Bowser bite? What would it take to get Bowser to bite? Do they really snap?
Yes, and he has snapped at me a couple of times. He gets kind of irritated when I rearrange his enclosure. If I'm messing around cleaning things and I'm moving things around, it kind of irritates him. I made the mistake once of reaching over to try to pet him while I was in the middle of that, and he kind of gave me a little half snap to let me know he wasn't cool with it. He'll give me a little bit of a snap when I go to clean his shell. Snapping turtles have this really rough, bumpy shell, and what that does for them in the wild is it collects mud and moss, and they grow algae on it, and it helps them blend in on the bottom of the river or the lake floor. And then they can just sit there quietly and then reach out and snap a fish as they go by. But in captivity, of course, when we bring him out for shows, we don't want him to feel nasty and slimy, so we do brush his shell and give him a bath, and he's not real thrilled about that, but he tolerates it.
Well, he's looking good. He's looking good. Shall we introduce our next guest?
Absolutely.
Whoa. Hi. Right. Hey, buddy. All right. Let's meet this cuddly friend.
This is Larry. And despite the name, Larry actually is a girl. I sadly misgendered Larry for a very, very long time. I started with 3 of these, 2 females and a male. We lost one of them after one had some babies, and I thought the one we lost was the mother, and so I thought I had a male and female left. I sold what I thought was the female because I didn't want to breed anymore. We had 6 babies, we still have 2 of them, so yeah, breeding and getting rid of the reptiles really isn't my thing, so it wasn't a good idea to have any more. Until I decided to take a close look at Larry one day. I was going to show somebody his residual spurs that only the males have, and Larry doesn't have any. So Larry's not the father of the 2 babies, but the mother. And Larry's been a part of our program now for several years. She is a Madagascar Dumeral's boa, obviously from Madagascar. They are a heavy-bodied ground boa. While some of them can get bigger than this, she is full grown. They range anywhere from size between 5 and 6 feet. Even the biggest ones can get up to about 8, but that's really, really rare. She's about a nice average, medium, middle of the road size. They're a pretty docile snake, and she's just been really good about I used to have a really big Burmese python that was the grand finale of my shows, but I'm old and I have a bad back and I don't really want to pick up a snake that big. So Larry is the big snake that we have that's impressive enough to really give kids a thrill, but yet small enough that I can handle her by myself, and she's quite comfortable to carry. And with her sweet, docile personality, she is a very nice addition to our program. She did give us a little bit of a scare one day. Dumeral's boas are ophiophagous, which means they will eat other snakes. And, okay, all of the Dumeral's boas in the United States are descendant from a group of about 50 individuals that were brought here many generations ago. So they're just a little bit inbred. And
She doesn't mean that, Larry.
we had Larry in a pillowcase. Larry was maybe about the size of this one over here. This is her son, Romeo. And we had Larry in a zippered pillowcase. And of course, Larry, being a snake, could smell a snake. She was smelling herself. And she felt the texture of the zipper, and so she started eating the zipper from inside the pillowcase, and then managed to get the zipper all the way down, and then started eating herself through the pillowcase. And of course, it just kept tightening around her, and I was right in the middle of one of my programs. I didn't know what we were going to do, but fortunately we were able to untangle her. Snakes regurgitate very easily, so the zipper came right back up, and obviously no harm was done to Larry. We do not put Larry in zippered pillowcases any longer.
Yeah, Larry seemed to be giving you a big hug there for a second around the neck.
Yeah. She's just recently woken up from her winter slumber, and she's had a nice meal, and now she's just kind of checking things out. They do move around, but mostly they just want to hold on so they don't fall. Romeo over here, her son, was born in September of 2012, and he actually belongs to my son Thomas. Thomas bought him from me with his own money because he didn't want to let him go. He has a little heart-shaped marking on his side, which is how he got his name. And believe it or not, Romeo has been an absolutely fantastic therapy animal. When Thomas came home from school when he was younger and he was frustrated or upset or anxious, he wouldn't talk. He'd just say, "I need to hold Romeo." And he'd go get Romeo out, and holding Romeo would just really calm him down. And they'd play Legos. And then there was the time that they tried to play trucks, but Romeo got stuck in the truck, and I had to take the truck apart to get him out. But that's a little kid for you. And Romeo also won grand champion at the Wayne County 4-H Fair in the pets division. So, yeah, we've got an award winner here. So this is Romeo and Larry.
All right, Romeo and Larry. Romeo was sort of warming up to me, I felt like there for a second, so that was nice. And I think we have, I'll let these Romeo and Larry get back in their cases for a moment. I believe we have some other friends to introduce.
Just one more.
We have one more friend. This is a large Tupperware type container. It doesn't contain.
This is Diesel's RV.
This is Diesel's RV, she says.
Recreational vehicle.
So we'll soon meet Diesel. Bowser's head is back out, but he's not going anywhere.
Yeah,
He's hanging
better
out.
reach over to pet him. He'll go right back in.
Oh, there he is.
He's a shy boy. Okay, come on, easy, easy.
Oh, here he comes. All right. Everybody, just so you know, always keep your pets on a leash. There's a leash here.
This is Diesel. Diesel is a black and white Argentine tegu lizard. And if you know what a Komodo dragon is or a monitor, these are basically the New World equivalent of monitor lizards. And they're known as the puppy dogs of the lizard world. Argentine tegus are actually quite popular as pets because they calm down quite nicely, and they will actually learn to interact with their owners. And Diesel's been with us. How long have we had Diesel?
Just after we got married.
Yeah, so,
years?
yeah. Yep, 6-7 years now. And she's been a great program animal. We can just obviously put her on the harness and leash, and Phil walks her around, and the kids just walk up and pet her. So she's a real sweet girl.
And she's only 2 kids.
She didn't even eat all of the second one, so I don't know that we can count.
She's eaten a child and a half. A child and a half is what's been consumed by Diesel.
She is a little bit on the skinny side right now because she hibernates, and she hibernates hard. She went down really, really early this last fall. It was actually still late summer. And she just woke up. She's had only a couple of meals since she woke up. And she had a nice full shed the other day. And so she's ready to rejoin the program.
Good shed will do that for you every time. So I think, do you have anything else about Diesel before we let people get a drink or come up and meet Diesel in person?
No, she's getting ready to go halfway go to sleep because I'm rubbing her jaw.
Yeah, Diesel, hang in there. Hang in there.
Whatever.
Yeah. All right, so we're going to take a break. Your options include going and getting another drink and or coming up here and meeting the reptiles. We have hand sanitizer, so worry not. They're very friendly. Larry snuggled my wrist, which was lovely. All right, I'm going to do a couple announcements while people have a chance to get back. Can I do that? Yeah, there we go. While people have a chance to get back to their seats. So the first thing is that we have Warp and Woof t-shirts now. So just a second. Control yourself. I know it's hard. If we were any good at business, we wouldn't be involved in a seminary. But also, we would have thought that once you have T-shirts, you should be prepared to do things like sell them or like take money or anything like that. But we're unprepared to do any of those things. So the best we can do is to say, if you think you would be interested in a Warp and Woof T-shirt, go on our website, where there is now a link about telling us that you're interested in buying a t-shirt, or our Facebook page will get you there too. And you will be in line. I can only assume there's a large waiting list for the new Warp and Woof t-shirts designed by our own local artist, Bennett Ritchie. I do not believe I've seen Bennett here this evening. Well, Bennett lost his chance to get this moment of fame and recognition, but this is Bennett's work. This is where's Kaya? This is based on Kaya's dog Apollo, who is sitting on a stool telling a story. So if you would like to have a T-shirt like this at some point in the future, get on our mailing list. We'll get you a T-shirt. We'll try to ask you for money for it, but like that has never really been our strong point. So speaking of money, did we ever do the donation bucket? So hiding in the back, refusing to ever be a front and center part of the show is our own Kristen Laws. Can we get yeah, let's get. You don't even know what you're clapping for yet, but you should be clapping because all the logistical stuff that makes this happen, website, like, I don't know, telling me that, oh, you have to do, I don't know, you have to find people to tell stories, like, also you have to do that before, like, the day before, like, that's Kristen's work. So thank you, Kristen, so much for doing that. And also thank you to Kaya Jackson, who is another co-founder of Warp and Woof and has made this happen. So applause for Kristen and for Kaya. Another thing, so I have to plug the people, my employer who gave me seed money for this. It's Earlham School of Religion and our writing program. And we think stuff like this is ministry, and we think the arts are ministry. And if you're interested in storytelling and community building and creative ways to be present to the world, that's kind of what we do. Or if you know somebody else who's interested in that, you might tell them to check us out. What is the other announcement that I have? Oh, I think that's it, actually. So I suppose I can pick my clothes and other things up off the stage in a second and introduce our next storyteller. And so our next storyteller moved to Richmond when he was 3, never left. He's completed at least one Ironman triathlon, which is nuts, and now has his own home improvement company, Second Generation Home Improvement. So we're going to get the second half of our program tonight started by welcoming Craig Weigel.
Okay, so my story starts with one of the handful of perks of having a terminally ill father when you're a young child. He didn't work, and nor did my mother to help take care of him. And we also had a motorhome. So summers were spent in the motorhome. That was my entire summer, obviously until he passed. That's the end of the downer stuff. So moving forward, we lived in this thing. It was one of the cab-over motorhomes where it didn't have a hood. So there's a giant section in the middle that you would pull up from the inside to work on the motor. Well, being in the 80s, that's where all the kids sat because you didn't have to worry about being buckled in. Back then, you just didn't have bad accidents, I guess. You just sat there, listened to your parents, Ronnie Millsap 8 tracks, or Neil Diamond and whatever they threw in, and we would just go to various campgrounds throughout the country. Never knew where we were. I just knew we were at a campground. So there was one time at a campground, I decided to take a nap on a picnic table, and when I wake up, my home for the summer is gone. Seemed odd, never had this happen. I am in our screened-in tent that goes over the picnic table. That was not a sign that they were coming back. And then also tied to the picnic table was my German Shepherd dog, Tila, for all of you He-Man fans. And so I'm sitting there thinking, and this is at 6, looking around, look at the dog, and I'm like, I understand why they probably left me, but why did they leave you? So I'm milling around the campground. It must have been out of season. Nobody was around. Didn't see any other motorhomes or any campers or anything. So I'm just sitting there trying to figure out what's going on, and pretty much the only thing that could come into my 6-year-old brain as to what happened is this is where and how adulthood starts. This is it. Here's your dog. Here you're in nature, and just go figure it out. So, talking with my sister in retrospect, she got to tell me the version of the story from inside the motorhome. Obviously, they just went into town to get supplies or whatever. I have no clue what they were doing. And then my mom, I doubt she had the big Kevin moment from Home Alone, but once my mom realized that I was not in the motorhome, not napping in the back, because that's the only other possibility for why her son was quiet. I outgrew that though, so that's a lot better now. So she's screaming at my dad to hurry up and get back to the campground to go get our son who's left behind. It's the nature nurture. I didn't know my dad well, but we seem to have the same parent style, and he's just like, okay, whatever. Nothing's gonna happen to him. That's the way I do my kids as well. They'll learn. Nobody's died yet, so we're good. So mind you, this is one of those giant motorhomes. The dining room, bathroom, a long walkway to the bathroom or to the back sleeping area. And my mom is wanting my dad to hot rod this thing through town and out of town to go save me, who's just sitting around a campground. And so I just start drifting around throughout the campground, just killing time. Maybe I'm thinking of how I'm going to survive and, what we're going to do. So it's just me and this dog who could walk me, which that was another bad idea. So as I am coming around the corner from coming back to the campsite, I see the motorhome parked there, and I look over at Tila, and I'm thinking, I guess they're coming back for the dog. And as you can tell, I survived my call to the wild, and so everything is all good. So thank you.
I don't know, that thing just jumped out and bit me. I thought it was a reptile. I didn't want to step on it. So yeah, thanks, Craig. Left alone at 6, no big deal, right? All right, so next up, she's a 2007 graduate, according to her Facebook page, of Earlham College, who just made her triumphant return as Earlham's Director of Outdoor Education. Please welcome Kim Reed.
So my story starts 2 weeks into a 3-week-long canoe trip in the Everglades. 2 of my 9 Outward Bound students, we'll call them Edgar and Chris, had just gotten into a big fight over a bottle of mustard. Edgar had tossed the bottle of mustard towards Chris, and either he didn't toss it hard enough or Chris didn't react fast enough, but the bottle of mustard ended up in the water and sank to the bottom of the Everglades, never to be seen again. So Chris, ignoring the fact that he didn't know how to swim, stood up in the canoe, took off his PFD, and threatened to cross the 3 canoes towards Edgar in order to punch him in the face. So, needless to say, our lunch took a little bit longer than we had anticipated because we had to talk about safety on the canoes and talk about assertive communication and how to properly manage your anger in the middle of the Everglades, as well as at home, at school, and in the rest of the world. So my job as a wilderness instructor for Outward Bound was to keep my students safe, but also to push them outside of their comfort zones so that they could work on whatever it was that they needed to be working on. So if that was anger management or communication, sometimes it was decision making or goal setting. But we were there as part of a special Outward Bound course that was funded by the Florida Department of Juvenile Justice. And it was a prevention program to try to keep teenagers out of the correctional system. We also had some students there who had already been in trouble with the law, and so they were there court-ordered. So usually they had the choice of 3 to 6 months in a juvenile detention center or 1 month at Outward Bound. And so a lot of them picked Outward Bound, and then usually regretted it on day 3 when they realized that they would be eaten by mosquitoes. There were clouds of these little bugs that we call no-see-ums. We were bathing in water that had alligators and crocodiles in it. They were hearing stories about the 20-foot pythons in the water. We were paddling against the tide, against the wind. And then they really didn't like pooping in a bucket on the boats. Because there's no land in the Everglades, so everything you do is on the boats. And then you had to paddle that bucket around with you. So they were not excited to be there. But this particular day, they were pretty excited because it was going to be the first time in 2 weeks that we were going to be on land. Because we had paddled through all the mangroves and made it out to the Gulf of Mexico. We were just going to paddle along the shore up to Highland Beach. And that was where we were going to all get out, and we were going to do a 48-hour solo experience, which is where they could reflect and rest for 2 straight days by themselves before we would have to head back. This was also when we would do a resupply, so we would get more food, more water, switch out our poop bucket, and maybe get some more mustard, which they were all really excited about. So, unfortunately, because of the mustard incident, we did not make it to Highland Beach that night. So we had to turn off of the Gulf. We went down a river as far as we could go, but the tide was pretty far out, so we couldn't go quite as far as we wanted to. And we found a little nook that we were able to throw our anchors down to make camp for the night. See, because there is no land, so you have to sleep on the boats. And so some Outward Bound instructors from long ago had figured out this system using plywood boards that were about the width and length of the canoes, and they would stay on the bottom of the canoes during the day, and we would bring them out at night and put them on top. And then we'd use some rope to tie some of them down so they wouldn't all be slipping all over the place. To make a nice little raft for us to sleep on. So we would have dinner, talk about our plans for the next day, and then go to sleep on this raft. We had these PVC pipes that were like the skinnier ones that we would stick in the ends of the canoe straight up so that we could hang clotheslines from them and then tie up these like individual bug nets that they would all sleep in. So there's just a whole line of bug nets, so we were kind of like little sardines all next to each other. But I really liked this system because you were sleeping under the stars. And so it's just really nice. I would usually bring my contact lens case in with me so I could just like lay and watch the stars before I went to sleep and before I took out my contacts. So we all went to sleep that night on the boats. And at some point in the middle of the night, I had my co-instructor, Jason, starts nudging me. And he's like, hey, we got to get up. Because it had started drizzling. So it normally doesn't ever rain at night in the Everglades, but he was starting to feel just like a little bit of spit coming through his bug net. So I woke up our other co-instructor, Mel, and we went in search of the tarp And so we found it under one of the sleeping students under their board. So I had to like gently lift it up to grab the tarp out. And then we were being really careful to be quiet and not wake everybody up. And so we were trying to like gently and gracefully unfold this really big tarp that was not graceful at all and was very loud, and then was weighing down on the students as they were sleeping. So they were starting to get annoyed with us. But we got the tarp out, we spread it over the whole raft, used the PVC pipes to tie it off. We got 2 paddles that we lashed together to make a big pole in the center. So we put it up in the center and it made kind of like a circus tent over all the sleeping students. And then we went back to bed. Next time I wake up, it's to fuck. And then rephrase from another student. And then fudge, freak, french fry. And then some mumbling. And so I'm like, okay, what are they gonna do? But we realized that the center pole had fallen and hit one of the students while they were sleeping. So I'm waiting, and so then Edgar, the one in the mustard incident, had gotten up and he fixed the pole and then went back to sleep, and I was like, okay, good. We're all right. A few minutes later, I hear some more cursing, some more mumbling, and the pole had fallen over again. So I wait again, see what's gonna happen. They don't get up this time to fix the pole. I'm like, it's fine, we're only gonna have a little bit of drizzle. We all go back to sleep. Next time I wake up, more cursing, more mumbling, but this time I have this really strange sensation that my feet are underwater. And then my ankles feel wet, and my calves, and my knees, and the water is slowly making its way up my sleeping bag. So I start nudging Jason, and being like, hey, we gotta get up. He's sound asleep, so I'm like really nudging him more. Finally he wakes up, he's like, what's going on? And I was like, I think we're sinking. Like, I think that the boats are taking on water. Like, I don't know how this is possible, but I'm definitely getting wet. So Jason, Mel, and I all get up, and we realize that a pool of water has formed in the center of the tarp to make this little lake. And the tarp has given out, so the water is now pouring through the center of the tarp all over all of the sleeping students and all over their sleeping bags. So they're not happy. So we're rushing around trying to fix the tarp, trying to get the pole, tightening it on the PVC pipes. When then another student, Ben, points and he's like, there's a motorboat. And so he's looking out at the mouth of the river towards the Gulf. And so we all turn around and we're like there is a motorboat and it looks like it's coming right towards us. And so then another student is like, I think we're moving. So I don't have my contacts in, so I'm trying to look through the darkness and look through the rain and I can't tell really what's going on. But then I look back towards the motorboat and I realize that it is not moving towards us, but that we are moving towards it and we are going out towards the Gulf of Mexico. So I'm like, oh shit. And then a student's like, rephrase. And then we hit the motorboat, which slows us down, but does not completely stop us. We ended up pulling the anchor of the motorboat up with us, and it starts wrapping around our anchors. So Mel is like quickly rushing over to the side, like trying to get us towards the shore to tie us off. So she ends up tying our raft off to one of the mangroves that's on the shore. Which is great, it gets us stopped. But then we realize because of the direction that our raft is facing, the water is coming out so quickly that it's pulling down the one side of our raft and is just like a quarter of an inch away from completely swamping that boat. So I'm like quickly like hopping over all of the bug nets, trying to get to the other side of the raft. I managed to tie off that side while Mel tries to untie us so that we can switch directions. Of course, she can't get the knot untied because of the pressure. So she gets her knife out, cuts it. The whole raft swings 90 degrees, and so now the noses of our boats are pointing towards the rushing water, so we're good. So we decide that we can stay. We tie off the motorboat. And so we all decide, okay, we can go back to sleep now. We're safe. So the students are like mumbling about how we're green and how we're all trying them and all those sorts of things. But eventually they do go back to sleep. And I crawl into my soaking wet sleeping bag, and it was one of the most miserable experiences I've had in the outdoors. But everybody goes back to sleep because it's still a couple hours until the sun comes up. The sun does come up and it's scorching. So we're all super hot and we have to get out. The bugs are horrendous, of course. And we then eventually convince the students that we need to paddle the 50 feet out to the Gulf of Mexico so that we can get some wind to get rid of all the bugs. They eventually do that. So then we're able to paddle up the shore a little bit. We find a little slab of land. We all stop. We get the students out. They spread out on the beach. We get them some food. We go check in with all of them to make sure that they're doing okay. And eventually we bring them all back so that we can head on our way to the beach. Thankfully, they're in much better moods now. And then our one student, Chris, who was also in the mustard incident, decides that he's going to give a pump-up speech to the group, which was amazing. And he even used one of the phrases that I had taught him a couple days before. That's a really famous Outward Bound quote that says, "There's more in you than you know." And so at this point, the students didn't know that this was actually my first course that I had ever led in the Everglades. And so even though this speech was really meant for the students and to get them all fired up, it was really exactly what I needed to hear. So thank you.
That was awesome, and probably you all caught this, but I think it just bears repeating. I mean, I've done stuff in the outdoors, but I had no idea that the way you slept in the Everglades was to build a raft on top of canoes out of wood that you carried with you. I mean, and so you build your own floating raft every night, and somehow being on that is still like the "we were safe then" part of the story.
Yeah.
I mean, that contraption by itself, to me, is amazing. So yeah, thank you, Kim. That was awesome. So let's clap for Kim again. And so next up, our next storyteller grew up on the cities and the beaches of Peru. Currently, she's an interpreter for Richmond Community Schools. So please welcome Pamela Zelaya.
Hello, everybody. Hi, I'm Pam. This is my first time, so take it as you go, okay? So, well, I grew up in the north of Peru, and at that time, my dad was working for the petroleum company, so we were living at the base, and actually living in that area kind of exposed me to outdoors at early age. So I was pretty much a free-range kid. So, I mean, I was running wild, no matter the time, making parents mad, with my gang of friends. But the cool part of everything is that we spend our holidays and vacations by the beach. And that was something that lasts for a long time, pretty much almost all my life until I came to the United States when I was 31 years old. So, but just to be outdoors kind of exposed me to know about nature and exploring, doing all those adventure things like climbing, hiking, swimming, surfing, fishing at night, late at night with flashlights. And then other things that kind of motivated me more to the outdoors was I have one of my uncles. He was a journalist, and for some reason, he left his book collections with him, and I love to read. So I found these American Adventures books, all written in Spanish, like Tom Sawyer, Huckleberry Finn. But one special book was called, in Spanish, the title in Spanish was La Llamada de la Selva. Selva means jungle in Spanish. So I was like, oh, this is a cool book. So I started reading the book, and really is the Call in the Wild. So I love dogs also too. I love dogs outdoors. They have to combine together. But that book had a special impact on me, you know. So now that I know that the movie is showing, I'm like, I need to see the movie. Because I read the book one time, and I only remember few things, but the thing that threw me off was that, what they say in the jungle, when really it's not the jungle, it's more the Yukon, Alaska, I don't know. Well, but eventually in my life, we moved to Lima, and Lima is the capital of Peru, and it's a big city, and kind of the outdoors with a little out, but my parents still like to spend, you know, time at the beach, and one of my uncles have a pretty house by a beach community, and the name of this beach was called Las Totoritas, and crazy how it sounds, this beach was actually built in an area where there were a lot of pre-Inca burials and ruins. I don't know why the government did not protect these areas, but well, it's third world country, I don't know. But there was this beautiful community, and we started spending weekends, holidays, summertime. So one weekend, well, before the one weekend, I have to say that everybody in the family, you have like your partner in crime, right? So I need to have somebody with the same spirit. That was my cousin Sandra. She was a little younger than me, but we were like explorers, curiosity. I kind of put her in trouble sometimes, you know. So I have more experience. I was graduated pretty much in outdoors and bonfires and everything, and climbing hills and stuff. So one weekend, I think it was just her, probably her dad was, you know, who was my uncle, Carlitos. He was a journalist, and he was actually who gave us the book collections. And he was crazy too, you know. He likes to make us, you know, you just go and do whatever you want, you know. And I think we spent that weekend with him, my cousin, and well, and it seems that it wasn't warm enough because we were not spending much time at the beach. So we have something to do. And we have all the beautiful area around this beach community to explore. So I have the great idea to say, let's go to Huaquiar. Huaquiar is kind of like, let's go to messed up historical sites, you know? So we knew that there were like these burials kind of a mile more away from the house. So we decided, let's go and do a big walking. So we put our backpacks, we took the dogs with us, and we hit the trails, because there was a few trails. And we were just passing different areas. They told us that we're going to see different things. And one part is kind of like a water entrance with two big rocks like this, and you can get sticks there for your bonfire. We call this one El Boquerón. That means the big mouth. Then you say you just keep going, and they told us that we're going to see like a hill like this, like a big cliff. The burial or cemetery was kind of the bottom, but if you go all the way to the top, you're going to see El Abismo. It was kind of like a cliff that you can look down. It was cool. But we did all that. We went all the way, look at the abysmal, come back. And then we started doing our excavations at the burial. So we started finding little artifacts and cool things. We kind of put in a little baggie, and we say, oh, we're going to take it to our history teacher and our classmates. And then we started playing around, digging. And when we went our digs, we find like hair. So we started digging more and digging more, and the hair was getting longer and longer, and it was attached to something. So then we started going around, and we just grab it, and we just get, a skull with all hair attached, even a bandana, and we have a skin, attached, mummified skin, and we were like, oh, this is amazing, look at what we found. So, I'm sorry, it was wrong all levels, but we decided to take the skull home. And when we decided, it was because we have this idea that we heard that the skulls protect your house, and we want that. We want that skull protecting the house. So we have a stick. I'm sorry, it's going to blow your mind. And we put the skull in the stick, and we walk all the way home with a big skull, with a long Inca hair, all the way here in the bandana. And we were like, yes! I don't remember the adult's face at all. But the house was surrounded by a brick fence, and they didn't build it that right, so they were kind of like metal sticks in the corner. And we decided like, oh, we put a name to the skull. And his name, I think, was Paco. Paquito. So we put Paquito in the corner facing the house, like looking like this. So we were also, my cousin and I, we were like, we believe in supernatural stuff. So we decided like that night, we're going to tell my uncle park the car facing Paquito to us, and we're going to camp in the car, in the family car. And we did. We grabbed blankets, flashlights. My cousin said that she's going to take a knife just in case. And we grabbed the dogs. So we put in this, like a Passat Volkswagen car, and we say, we're going to sleep in the front seat. I will be in the driver, you will be in the other side. So we were like facing Paquito. Everything was very, very dark. No street lights at all. And he started looking a little creepy. So we were like showing like, the flashlight, And my cousin Sandra was kind of a hyperactive, skinny girl. She had those jerk movements like this, And she was trying to sleep, but she was moving a lot. And I was like, what's going on with you? You're just making me nervous. And then she said, like, I need to pee. And I was like, what? I need to go in the house. I said, I'm not going anywhere. I'm staying here. So I think that breeze was kind of flowing, and we can see Paquito's hair moving like this. But sometimes at night when you look at something for a long time, it's starting like kind of turning, like moving, like weird. And then I think something flew close to Paquito. It was kind of like a small owl, and that was it. I don't have any memory sleeping and finishing sleeping in that car. I just remember waking up in the house. So I think the next day, my uncles finally got in reason and said, you had to return Paquito back to where it came from. And I text my cousin Sandra so she can refresh me stuff, because I was like, I remember everything like this and that. And I put in the stick and say, I don't remember the stick. No, I didn't remember the stick. but she remembered putting Paquito in the corner, in the fence corner. And she said, we were making rituals, Pam. What? We were making rituals? Yes, we were making rituals. We do stuff. And so we have to do like a ritual for Paquito to say bye, you know. So she said, I don't remember, but she told me, you brought some fruit and flowers, and you make a nice altar when we just do a farewell party for him. And then I think we put Paquito back in the stick, and we took it all the way back to the burial. And I think after that, our weekend experience was pretty cool. And I don't think that we were hoping that Paquito stay in his burial forever, ever, and nobody touch him anymore. Thank you.
I mean, because who among us doesn't have a story about discovering a mummified pre-Inca head on a family vacation and taking it home to our parents? That was awesome. Thank you, Pam. So we've got one storyteller left. And this guy, he seems like a pretty domestic dude, if you know him now. For a program themed as Call of the Wild. I mean, I met him through church. I know him as a devoted father, husband, an active community volunteer. You might know his work from the Meltdown, the Women's Fund, Main Street Beautification, lots of other civic projects. So, I was really surprised to hear that he might have a story for Call of the Wild, but there's things about Rafi Rivera that we may not know. So please welcome to the stage, Rafi Rivera.
Cool. How about a big round of applause for all of the storytellers here tonight? I mean, that was some pretty good, interesting stories. I love it. When my dog dies and I buy another dog, I might name it Paquito. So, Warp and Wolf, wild, Call the Wild stuff. I don't know. I was kind of glad that Ben invited me over to Warp and Wolf. And I mean, we've been talking about doing Warp and Wolf for quite some time. We shared some stories too, and he's like, "Oh yeah, that's a good story." "Oh yeah, that's a good story." But me growing up in New York, I got a lot of wild stories. I'm surprised I'm still alive, or I'm not in jail, engaged to Bubba. It's pretty crazy. But moving to Richmond, there's a lot of wild stuff too in Richmond. Like coming down 40 and cutting somebody off to turn on 16th Street and down there. Oh, you guys done that before. So, might have been US. But yeah, I'd settled down a little bit. I think more so when I got married, engaged. And I got engaged in 2002. I was about 31 years old. And again, I did a lot of crazy, wild stuff before that. So I figured, I got to settle down, it's all good. But I still had it in me, New Yorker. Got to get into stuff. So we got married and we decided to take our honeymoon on a Caribbean cruise. 7-day cruise. It was awesome. Cozumel, Mexico, Grand Cayman, Jamaica. And, we were having a great time on all of those ports. Till we got to Jamaica. So we get off and we start walking down the plank, and everybody's talking about all these excursions and stuff to do. And the guy, one of the people that work on the cruise line says, the locals here, they smoke weed, and they can smoke weed, but you can't. Really? Yeah, it's against the law for you guys to smoke weed, but they'll do it. Okay, fine, whatever. I'm not into that anyways. Yeah. So we walk into this little restaurant. We're sitting down. I'm drinking Red Stripe, having Jamaican beef patties, and life's all good. And one of the things that we were really, really looking forward to was going to Dunn's River Falls. Had to do it. So after lunch, we take a cab down to the Dunn's River Falls, and it was all great. We were looking forward to this experience. And if you guys haven't been down there, it's just you walk down these little falls and stuff, and you walk back up. It's pretty cool. But before we got there, we buy our tickets and we're walking to the area where they're gathering us together to go down. And in the distance, I see little Jamaican guys. He's hopping over. And me and my wife, my fiance, we're together. And, well, yeah, that's right. Yeah, we are married. And he hops over to me. He goes, "Hey, man, you smoke?" And I'm thinking to myself, he's a little shady-looking guy. No, I don't smoke. I don't smoke. "Yeah, man, you smoke." "No, I don't. I really don't. I'm okay. I'm good. He said, "You cool?" I said, "Yeah, I'm cool." This time, I'm contemplating, shit, yeah, I smoke, dude. But I'm also thinking, and that's my wild side, I'm also thinking, locked up abroad, I got no bail money, I don't know what I can get rolled from this guy, I have no clue what this guy is up to. So I'm like, no, I'm okay, I'm good. It's okay. So he hops away. So then we're getting ready and we're going down to the falls, and I see the Jamaican guy again comes and goes, "Hey man, you smoke? You good? You smoke?" "Yeah." "What you got?" "Oh, come down over here. We'll settle up." So my wife's looking at me and I'm looking at her. I'm like, "I'll be back in a little bit. I'm going to go with this little guy over here and see what he's got." So he takes me down the path a little bit, and I said, "Where are we going?" He goes, we're going to go to the bathroom." So I'm like, well, shit goes south, I could take him. At least him. I don't know who else he's with, but I could take him. So we go into the stalls, and he just pulls out this freaking sack. And I'm like, "How much?" He says, $50. $50? We're in Jamaica. "No." "Hey, man, $30. No, I'm not going to pay you $30. $20 and some cigars. Sold. Because if you guys know me, I'm a sucker for cigars. So that's what really sealed, the weed didn't seal the deal, the cigars sealed the deal. So, we exchange money. Before we exchange money, I'm kind of like looking around and seeing what's going on. And I said, "Let me think about it for a little bit." I'm sorry, because I got ahead of the story. I said, "Let me think about it for a little bit." So we leave. And we do the Dunn's River Falls, and we're coming back up the falls. And here comes the little guy again. "You ready, Mom?" Yeah, I'm ready. So we do the deal. And so I got this big old sack of weed and a bunch of cigars. And we're walking back to the cruise ship. And I'm feeling pretty good. I scored. And right before you get to the cruise ship, there's like all kinds of people there, and they're getting searched. And they got the bags open, and the guys are looking through stuff, and I'm like, shit. There's a little gift shop over there. "Babe, I'll be right back." So I go to the gift shop, and I kind of just hide it in my pocket, really, really, really good. I get out of the gift shop, I buy something. I buy a bottle of rum. We're walking up, and the cruise ship people are like, "So let me check your bag." "Yeah, go ahead, check your bag, go." It's all good. And so my wife's nervous. And so she's kind of just like next to me, and I'm next to her, and they're just going through all the stuff. And I start to get nervous. I'm like, that's pretty stupid what you just did. So my heart starts racing, and then the guy goes, okay, go ahead. You guys are good. So I'm like, stupid but cool. Yeah. So we're walking up to the gangplank, we get in the ship, and it's freaking party. I mean, literally. Because I got all this weed, right? And I think I'm Big Willie, and I'm doing all the crazy things that the Big Willies do, and I'm smoking weed. We're out, because we got a little balcony, so we're sitting out there on the balcony, overlooking the beautiful ocean and the stars and stuff, and we're just chiefing it up. All the smoke's coming out of our room. And the people in their balcony over there, they're like, "Can you believe her smoking weed on the ship?" Yeah. And I'm like, yeah, who cares? So we're getting close to the end of the cruise, and we're heading back. And I got all this weed still, because it was impossible to smoke all this. I mean, this thing looked like, the bag that the guy gave me looked like a frickin' burrito that you get at Chipotle. That's how big this thing is. So my wife calls her friend Clark and says, hey, when you get back to the port, how can we get through all this? Because don't they have like all of the security and customs and so on and so forth? And her buddy Clark was like, oh no, they're checking for explosives and bombs. They got dogs and stuff out there. And, they're not really interested in all that stuff. Well, okay, yeah, okay, cool. And then I start to panic as we're pulling into Miami. So I do what any natural wannabe smuggler would do, which is to go grab some conditioner and some baggies and put everything together and wrap it up and slather it with some shampoo and conditioner. I don't know what the hell I was doing. And I'm wrapping it up and trying to get everything all nice and packaged. And I'm like, this might work. I might pull this off. And my wife, Allie, she goes, I don't know. I think I don't know if this is a good idea. I'm like, no, babe, I got it. Trust me, we're good. And then as we're getting all of our stuff prepared and leaving, we hear over the PA, make sure that you put all your bags outside of your door. Where am I going to put my weed? It's going to go in the bag. And then it's got to go outside of the door. And then I got to leave it all by itself, subjected to all kinds of stuff that can incriminate me. So I do what any natural smuggler would do, is I tell my wife, I got an idea. I'm gonna put down my pants. Well, how are you gonna do that? I don't know, but I'm gonna put down my pants. Give me your panties. What do you need my panties for? Because I have boxer shorts and it'll fall out, dummy. Come on. So I stretch my wife's panties out, putting them on. So now I got a big old dub sack with some cigars in between my legs, and my bag is outside of the room, and I'm walking like I just came off of a horse for 7 days. And we get off the ship, and it's all good, and then we go in through the terminal, and then we're going to customs, and the guy goes, do you have anything to clear? Bottle of rum. It's all about. In Jamaica. Was your trip good? Yep. Okay. Score. Passed it. Done. Woohoo, wild side, 1. The man, 0. And so we're walking, and I don't know if you guys have been to the terminals when you take a cruise ship, but it's like at the airport. So you wait for your bags and stuff, right? So we walk down there, and we're standing in front of the carousel, and the bags are going through. And Allie goes, you're a fucking idiot, but you pulled it off. I was like, yeah, we're gonna chief it up in Florida too. And so we're waiting for our baggage to come through, and Out in the distance, there's a guy in a camouflage uniform with a German Shepherd. Babe, call my wife babe. In savings, just make sure that you pull enough out to bail me from jail when the shit goes down. And stand over there, because if you're with me, we're both going down. You're a fucking idiot. I know. So she stands over to the side, and here comes the state police in his camo with the dog, and I'm standing there waiting to get all the bags. And I am frozen. I'm not moving a muscle. I'm not looking. I'm not side-eyeing. I'm gonna get my bags and go, and that's it. And I'm waiting for the bag. And it's not coming, and they're getting closer. And I'm still waiting for the bag, and now they're right over here. And I'm waiting for the bag, looking at the carousel, and I'm focused on my bag. Hurry up, bag, fucking hurry up. And all of a sudden, and I just kind of just glanced to the corner, and the dog's nose is up my ass. And it felt like years. And it was new, a feeling I never felt before. And I'm just sitting there, and my wife's in the corner. And I'm holding my composure. I'm just sitting there, and the handler goes, come on, let's go. And I said, Jesus, please, never again will I do something this stupid if you just let me go. And I won't ever do something stupid like this again, as much as I feel like the wild side wants to come out of me and do something stupid again. So he leaves, and they do their thing. I grab my bag. Allie goes and grabs her bag, and she says, you're a fucking idiot. That's it. We're in our honeymoon, and we got married, and we spent all our money, and you expect me to go get savings to bail you out? You're a freaking idiot. I know, babe. So as we're walking up, and we're getting ready to leave, there's another checkpoint, and they're just like yanking people left and right. You, over there, you, over there, you, over there. And I'm walking, and in this room, they got everybody up like this. And I said, this is it. If I could pass this, I'm good. And I'm telling you, I'll never do something stupid like this again. Jesus, just let me go through. And I'm sure Jesus was like, you're a fucking idiot. I don't know. I got to think about this one. And so we grabbed our bags, and we make it through the checkpoint, and we leave, and we're coming outside, and my sister-in-law is waiting in her car, and she goes, you know, I've been out here waiting for you guys for the past hour. Where have you been? And I'm thinking, if you only knew. But we get in the car, we drive off, and we head back to our apartment. And yeah, that was a seriously call to the wild. I think that was like my last wild experience, I'd say. But it was fun. It was really fun.
Thanks, man. Now it's appropriate to say that the Earlham School of Religion does not necessarily endorse the content of any of the stories told on our stage. But I mean, like, needless to say, I mean, I'm sure Allie was like, well, I got me a winner here. You know, this guy's a keeper. All right, y'all. Well, that's it for tonight. It looks like it stopped snowing, but thank you for coming out in the snow. I mean, I think this was a really great group of stories. This was awesome. So let's thank and clap for the storytellers. Thanks, y'all. And we'll be back pretty soon. Like our Facebook page. Sign up for the T-shirts that we don't know how to charge you for. And look for the next show. And maybe if you think you know somebody who tells a really good story, put us in touch. So thank you all. Good night.